Good evening, everybody. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Von Rudenberg. Here. Deputy Mayor Canestrino. Yes. Deputy Mayor Sims.
Here.
Councilmember Pataglia.
Yes.
Mayor LaBrus.
Here.
This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act and JSA 10:4-6 et sec. Notice having been published according to law with a copy on file in the city clerk's office and a copy posted on the bulletin board in City Hall.
Thank you. Would everybody please rise for the flag salute?
Is mine or yours?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Before I turn it over to our city manager for his agenda, I'd just like to have a quick moment of silence. Our two members of our condo advisory board recently passed. One was Thomas Lydon from the Eiffel Tower and Nancy Price from the Ivanhoe. So if we could just please have a moment of silence. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge three past chairs of that advisory board who have done outstanding work for that board. And that would be Murray Roonan, Connie Bavino, unfortunately not here tonight, and Alexis Palankas. So I see two board members here. Can you guys make sure they echo those? And I'll read this again at the, if you could just echo to them that their names were mentioned and that we appreciate everything they've done, because they were past chairs. Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the Committee of the Whole for the September 24, 2019 meeting. First on the agenda is a discussion about input for food truck vendors and restaurant owners for the city of Hackensack. If you last remember, we had a prepared ordinance by the city to hopefully foster food trucks to be utilized in the city of Hackensack, because currently under our statute, there is no provision for food trucks. So the mayor and council got a review of it, and their review was that they thought it was too restrictive. So the ordinance was pulled, and it was decided that we would have the CAL meeting set aside to get input from restaurant owners, food truck owners, and any interested party to express either thoughts or suggestions on how we should craft this ordinance. So if the mayor opens it up to the microphone for people to come up, we could start that process.
I need a motion to open to the public, please.
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Anybody from the public who'd like to speak to this subject, please come forward. Time limit on this? Stick with 3?
Good evening, Joe
Stay with 3 minutes.
Hackensack. I think the food trucks are a necessity near the breweries, okay? There's really nothing there. People need to eat when they drink. It's not safe. You can't serve food there, so something should be done there. That's without the question. I think it's really too soon to open food trucks to the street. I think we should focus on, little by little, establishing this ordinance as the city grows for any food truck to be allowed to stay on Main Street. I mean, you come up with this mailer you get all the time. When we put out a mailer for the thing you're doing now, when we had a development program for the trolley, which is pretty much the same thing, we handed out magazines, and we didn't put our own pictures on it. We listed for free it was Bergen magazine, the trolley shop, where we listed for free all the food and clothing establishments, and I'll scan a picture and send it to you. I'll scan a copy of the magazines. It's really, it hurts. I mean, you could say it's a little bit. It's not much, but that little snack that you're going to have when you're coming out of the courthouse or law office is going to keep someone from going to one of the already established, struggling businesses. And I understand you did let some people know, but there's really no one here, too many people here from the food industry, because they didn't know. I didn't flyer them. Last time I flyered the few that I could last minute. So I think you really need, and I submitted an Oprah request, and you don't have a list of all the restaurant owners or any of the restaurant owners. Your attorney even says you don't even keep a list. You're not obligated. So really, they weren't given the opportunity that food trucks are going to be discussed. It's not fair. I think that's a great idea for a later time. I think it's good to have food trucks for special occasions, like at the Green or wherever. And I think if you do that, you should also invite the existing establishments to have a table for their food so they can hand out menus too. Because, people are really struggling. And sir, you know that a lot of these people from Ecuador and Colombia, they put their lives, their whole families come to go to work, and they're really trying very hard. And people are going out of business left and right. I just passed Casual Habana, beautiful place. All these places are empty. Food truck is only going to take away from their daily lunchtime visits. But as far as the breweries go, it's a necessity. It could save a life, So you got to allow the food trucks within so many feet of a brewery, or even if you could allow them in the lots, if that's okay, if it's not against the state law. I think it's a necessity there. That's all I got to say about that.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mayor, Council, City Manager, good evening. I'm just here in my capacity as the city's liaison to the Main Street Business Alliance. They met this evening, and they know this is a topic of conversation, and I had just forwarded an email recently to our manager. I'm sure I didn't get a chance to see it, and our city attorney. They've just requested the opportunity to study the issue a little bit more and compare any proposed ordinance with what other municipalities, local municipalities are doing to address it. In the past, the Alliance has always been, I think, just a good source of research and information sharing. So they've just requested a little bit more time to better understand what's being proposed and how that might affect what's happening in the downtown and the city generally.
Okay.
And the other point I will just raise in response to the last comment, the owner of Casual Habana, Benny Rivera, was one of the chief proponents of the food truck event that happened on the Courthouse Green, and is very much a believer that a rising tide lifts all boats. He's the voice of one restaurant owner, and there are other restaurants on Main Street who I know are not in favor of it. So I think that the Alliance wants to get a better handle on what the consensus is and what makes sense for the town. So I just wanted to relay that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Blake Crawford. I'm one of the owners of the Elementary Brewing Company in North Hackensack. I just wanted to take a minute to clarify exactly why we thought that the ordinance as written was overly restrictive. As you guys are aware, by state regulation, all breweries are forbidden from coordinating or collaborating with any provider of food, whether they be mobile, brick and mortar, doesn't matter. We're not allowed to coordinate in any way for the provisioning of food. So, you have food truck owners are very tenacious entrepreneurs, and they see two breweries within 600 feet of each other, and they start seeing dollar signs in their heads. So you can't blame them for wanting to be near the breweries. But more specifically, when it comes to our specific business, the state does allow us to have 52 private events on site per year, 12 on-site special events per year, and 12 off-site special events per year. So if you look at just the property that we own on Voorhees Lane, we're allowed to have 64 private events, 64 events per year by state law. Food trucks are an overwhelming favorite catering option for people who are availing themselves of those private events. So the way that ordinance was written, sort of with the zoning language, we viewed that as could have potentially restricted our private event or catering customers from choosing the food trucks that they would want to choose for their private events. The private event business for breweries is a very lucrative business, and so anything that threatens that, we react sort of very strongly to. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that from the provisioning of food, it's not an issue of we prefer food trucks over local restaurants, because we're not allowed to have an opinion one way or the other, so says the state. They actually try to make breweries the most boring places on earth to visit. But from a business perspective, the catering and event business, we are allowed to have 64 of those per year. So the limit to 6 we thought was overly restrictive.
Blake, could you just go over that 64 number again, how you came to that? 'Cause I just want to make sure.
Sure, it's 52 private events per year. It's strange that the state restricts private events, but they do. We're allowed to have 52 per year, not necessarily one per week, but a total of 52 per year. And we're allowed to have 12 on-site special events per year. And the on-site special events per year that they specify are things like brewery anniversaries. Maybe we wanted to show the Masters on a television, something that's like a big event that's going to bring people in. Those are events that, of course, food trucks are very beneficial for those events because you bring a lot of people in. Like last week, Pat Mahady, who many of you know if you're familiar with him at the hospital, he did a brewery to brewery run, which was simply he arranged for buses to drive people down to Brick City, and they ran on the streets up to Hackensack Brewing to raise money, and to Hackensack Brewing and then to Elementary to raise money. Those are events that people really like to have food trucks at, because on our side of town, there's not a whole lot on weekends that's open and available for people.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So those 64 events that you have a year, are you allowed to serve food at those events?
So the 52 private events, right?
Okay.
We cannot provide food, but a private event may be a corporate retreat. That's a popular one, right? So a company, Unilever, might contact us and say, we want to bring 40 people over and we want to bring a food truck in, right? So the restriction to 6 permits per year on any particular private property would have restricted us to only 6 of those 52 events to have been catered by a food truck. The New Jersey Education Association does multiple events by us per year. They're always catered by a food truck, one specific food truck. So private events, the event holder is allowed to sell food.
Okay.
Right?
Gotcha. Understand.
For public events, those are just larger events, like a brewery anniversary, that naturally attract more people. And food truck owners, the New Jersey Food Truck Association pays attention to those sorts of things because we have to file that with the state. And then they pay attention to those events, and that attracts more of them here. So from our perspective, it was solely an issue of, if there is health department permitting and there is fire department permitting, and there's no outstanding public safety issue, from our perspective, we feel like that should be allowed. The challenge that you guys have with an ordinance like this relative to numbers is that the numbers that I just gave you guys were all provided by the director of the ABC, who could literally be replaced at any moment. This was all in a special ruling that was issued by the director of the ABC. So, that could change tomorrow. That's the situation as it is right now. But if you guys, think further about restricting specific numbers and not types of places, then I fear we're going to have this conversation again.
Well, what I'd like to do, and we went way over our time, but I'd like to, what really needs to happen is the breweries have to get in a room with us, all right? And some of the restaurant owners have to get in a room with us as well, because we have to be fair to everybody. But, we have 2 issues here. Obviously, the food truck issue itself and one dealing just with breweries. I think we have actually 2 things we're dealing with here. So, and that's the way it probably should be approached, because what we don't want to do is have one size fits all that could really affect a retail business on Main Street where somebody just pulls up in front of their place, in front of a pizza place, and starts selling pizza.
Sure.
That's the last thing we want to do to somebody. And we're in total favor of food trucks. We love food trucks. That's not the issue. There has to be, as you heard, we have no regulations right now. We need to craft, as you guys do with your beer, an ordinance that fits, or ordinance or 2 probably, that fits you guys, and one for the downtown areas.
Sure, that's understood. I just want to make sure we were all clear about why we were.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of the
shocked by
52
limit.
private events.
Yeah.
Blake, I think you really jumped the gun. I don't think nobody on this council put a number 6 out there. I don't know where you came up with that, but
I mean, that was in the public notice. That was in the draft ordinance that was public noticed, and that's how I found out about it, was in the public notice. So that's why we reacted strongly, because for us it seemed very out of the blue.
Actually, the
Yeah,
attorney can speak to that.
The number
of permits that would be available was determined by city's administrative staff based upon what they felt they had the capability of being able to handle because of the inspections that are necessary to ensure that food trucks are safe. I mean, right now, there is in our ordinance a specific language regarding food trucks with prepackaged food. And those are, perfectly acceptable. You can get those and there's no limitation on those. The issue is food trucks that are going to be doing their own cooking and how you handle them and how they get inspected, and how we ensure that they're safe if they're using open flames, for example. So, our city code doesn't really address those issues. So what they were trying to do was really expand the universe of what they're really supposed to be doing in an amount that they felt would be something they could handle. And then if it was necessary to go beyond that, or the resources were available to go beyond that, they would consider doing so. So that's the genesis of the number 6, which was, each food truck could come in up to 6 times a year, up to 5 days per event, because, you don't want to have a separate permit if you're going to have a 5-day festival, for example. And then each property would be able to host a single food truck. It could be the same food truck, it could be different food trucks 6 times. Whether that is a magic number or not, I don't think it is. That was the consensus of, the health people, the code people, the fire department. But certainly there's no reason why it has to be 6 or greater or fewer, depending on what the council believes would be appropriate. But we always have to keep in mind the resources to be able to ensure that it's done safely. And that's always the trick, is balancing those two things.
Of course. Of course.
And if I may add, we as a council really have to brush ourselves up and learn more about this, is why I'm asking all these questions. One more question about these 52 events this year. So if someone's catering an event, so they can say, I'm catering it with a food truck, can that food truck then park on your property?
Yes, it's a wonky point, the way the state
Okay.
defines the
Right, but,
brewing premise.
These are
but
all
yes.
things I think we have to be able to figure out and understand, because
Yeah.
then, to me, that would be different than having it someplace.
Yeah.
Like maybe these 52 events, those types of things, and where it's a private event, we may have to understand what all the rules are and.
Yeah, we've operated on a basis of never allowing food trucks on our property. So 58 Voorhees Lane, which Michael and I own, we own that entire lot. We have never allowed food trucks on that property.
Okay.
Solely because there is a difference between the property that we own and how the state defines the quote-unquote brewing premise, and it's too confusing. It's a minor
So it's
point
better
that
to just have it in.
yeah, it's not a
Just
point that
trying to-
anybody not in our industry would really understand. So we've always just said,
Okay.
go next door or go down the
Just
street.
trying to understand. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Pascal. I know we went over, but
Regina DePasqua. I heard from both sides, and I know you're trying to balance it. There's the coffee shop on Main Street, the food truck Fridays on, during the summer. That upset him, and I understand that, because people weren't going, down the block. They were stopping at the Green coming out of the courthouse. But it's a totally different thing up at the breweries. And I understand you had based it on Paramus, which has maybe, 5 or 6 food truck festivals a year. And they have an actual festival. You have to pay $5 to get in, and there's 30 trucks, and that's a whole different animal. Might I suggest that you look at Hoboken, which is more on par with how we are, having restaurants, having, breweries, having a nightlife more or less, that we have, but we do have people that go to have dinner. Hoboken, they give 1-year permits to food trucks. And so you're in the system, and you have something to say?
That was a misunderstanding. Paramus does not have a 6 limit.
No, they have 12. Paramus has 12.
Paramus doesn't have any.
Okay,
Has
fine.
no limitation, and like you said, you have to get a register with Paramus once a year.
Well, that's the way Hoboken does it. But Hoboken has something wonky too, because they have more food trucks that if you don't use it for 14 days, you have to renew it, and we don't have that kind of yet. Hoping to, but don't have that kind of food truck business yet. But they have food truck festivals not festivals, but food trucks on the pier, on the Hoboken Pier, every weekend just about. And quite often it's the same trucks, but it would be a good frame of reference, more of what we have to balance between restaurants, a main street. Paramus doesn't have a main street. It's Route 17. I grew up there. Route 17 was my main street. So we have Main Street and the breweries, and to balance it, I just think that Hoboken's would be, tweak it to fit us.
We will look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Richard Solican, Hackensack. I just have a question. I guess I'll direct it at Stephen. Are the food trucks regulated by the state, licensed by the state as well?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, aside from motor vehicle registration.
No, the health, I'm just concerned about the health issues and the
Yeah,
inspection.
and that's a legitimate concern. I mean, right now, there's kind of a bit of a, it seems like a regulatory void when it comes to, how we deal with food trucks and ensuring, that they're safe. I mean, obviously, these food trucks generally will come in and they'll be licensed in, a place like a Hoboken or someplace that might, issue
But no
a
statewide
permit. But
okay.
to my knowledge,
We're getting into
I mean, they would be
into
required to
regulation.
comply with,
Sadly.
the state, there's a state health code that I've reviewed as part of this where, it talks.
Yeah, but if they're not
about-
inspecting, it's us. Okay,
Yeah, but I think it's us.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Not necessarily. Good evening, Mayor and Council, Mr. Manager. I just wanted to shed a little bit of light, a couple of inconsistencies that went on. When it comes to permitting, specifically fire permits, and I believe it's the same with the health, there was some mention about private events versus public events. Permits are required for public events. The ordinance that was put together, the intent was public events on private property. Maybe the wording needs to be adjusted and changed and whatnot. But as far as, fire permits go, we all know Hackensack's a top-rated ISO #1, arguably the best department in the state. We're always going to follow everything by the letter of the code. Code clearly says food trucks get fire permits. It's an open flame in conjunction with a public gathering. We're going to be there to do the inspections to ensure the safety. So the fire code does not have a limit on how many times, but that definitely brings the fire department there for public gatherings, not private gatherings.
Now, is there a timeline? I don't know whether it pertains to the Board of Health or the fire department. Say the event's going to start at 12 o'clock. That truck has to be inspected when?
Prior to commencement, it isn't set
It's not
forth
written
in the
in stone.
code, no. I mean,
Can it be done the day before?
if the food truck is going to move,
I'm saying if that food truck is parked there, say the event's set, it's going to be there Saturday, Sunday, they bring it in Friday. What I'm trying to avoid is, and I'll bring this up while the brewery people are here, is for us to have an inspector on a Saturday,
absolutely.
union rules is 3-hour minimum.
What we
We
would,
got to pay a fire inspector, 3 hours
right, 2 hours.
to do that,
But
and the
what-
permit's $45, so.
But what we would do in that case is if we had the ability to do the inspection during normal work hours, we just
Exactly.
go to the facility, we have them fire all the flames up.
Right.
We use our meters to check for gas, we use our meters to check for CO. If everything's good and the truck is gonna stay at that
And
location.
that may be
we're
feasible
good.
at some times in order to do that, but there's probably
Absolutely.
gonna be a different fee for Saturdays than Fridays, is what I'm saying. And
Yeah,
if we can
moving forward, that
circumvent
might
and
be
save them
necessary.
money by doing it on, they get the food truck there on a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, 3
Correct.
o'clock, we can get it done.
Yeah, well, that's like, when the carnival comes around to the church. We do our inspections at, 4:30 the first day that they're gonna
Right.
go into operation, because they're all set up and they're starting their fryers up and whatnot, so we're able to
Right.
see it in operation.
Okay,
And then you don't have to do it each day. So even with a food truck, like if they
No.
were going to be there Saturday and Sunday, if you did it Friday,
The concern is if they leave.
if the truck leaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vibrations on the road, gas fittings loosen up.
Right, but as long as it stays there, then you're okay.
Correct.
You only have to do it the one time.
Correct.
And now again, let's be clear about these private events. So if it's a private event and they have a food truck and the food truck isn't at the location, as they said, it may be next door somewhere, whatever. Because it's a private event, even with an open flame, you don't have to inspect it?
The way the code reads is,
So for these 52 or 64
Open flame in
events,
conjunction with a public gathering,
Okay, Teaneck,
word for word.
Teaneck just had an event over at their armory, and those fire inspectors came on that Saturday. They didn't come back on that Sunday, and those vehicles went home. It's
Yeah.
only 4 fire departments that are paid, and all these towns with these volunteer firemen, which do a lot, they don't go out to these food trucks and inspect them.
Yeah. Like I said, the code sets forth what needs to be done. I can't speak for other jurisdictions on what they do or don't do, but in Hackensack, we do everything, err on the side of safety. The code says it needs to be checked, we check it.
Whose code? It isn't in the
Fire
state.
code. Correct.
The state says you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I have it here.
it says you have to do.
I could share it with you.
But I think it helps now that we have clarification between 52
Yeah.
private events
Or 64
and
or
24
special
public
events or-
events. That's a big
Right.
Yeah,
Is there-
public
Difference.
events shouldn't be at a high frequency.
Is there something in the fire code that distinguishes between a public and private event in a meaningful way?
No, there's no specific definition. I mean, unfortunately, most of the fire code all says at the discretion of the fire official. It's basically on every page.
Because if we're going to legislate to that, I'm just thinking about any changes, we would probably need to define for ourselves, and that may be a conversation with the brewery owner about what constitutes, a private event in a meaningful, in a meaningful distinction and a definition that appropriately, sets forth the differences between the two.
Absolutely.
And is it true that only certain firemen can do this inspection? Like you have to have some kind of certification or like, so it's not like if say our firemen work 24/7, so it's not like even on a weekend that we would have someone that could do this. Is that true or not true?
In the fire code, everything is for licensed inspectors.
Okay. How many do we have? Do we know?
We have 3 full-time licensed
Okay.
inspectors. We have about 10 that work part-time. If a firefighter performs an inspection, it falls back on the fire official. So basically, anything that he does becomes the fire official's responsibility.
And so most of these fire inspectors work Monday to Friday, I assume. Is that
Yeah,
really what it is?
we work a 4-day week, 10 hours a day.
All right, so I guess to John's point, if we had to, I guess maybe there would be a different fee associated with the cost to the city for doing these inspections.
Something to consider in the future.
Safety is always number one. It's a little red truck over there at that circle at Valley Fair. I've been going to him for 30 years. He said the fire inspectors never come out there.
Like I said, I can't speak for other
It's not
jurisdictions.
Hackensack.
I know that. I mean, are we
But he
trying
does
to make
have great
our
hot
own rules
dogs.
over here?
No, we're a
No, we're
level,
following
we're a
rules.
level
They're not-
A1
You trying
fire
to say Good
department.
Ferry is not following the rules?
If they're never inspecting a truck, they're not
Or
following the
Teaneck
rules.
didn't follow the rules on Sunday over there?
They may
I
not
can-
have.
I can say that this year I attended many festivals around the state, off duty with my family and whatnot, and there was an incredible difference in safety, security, alcohol consumption, and supposedly we all have the same book, and it was a big difference from all the festivals I went to. So, I mean, a lot of it falls back to the jurisdiction, to the department in charge.
Enforcement.
I'm just going to weigh in here real quick and say that the Hackensack Fire Department is number one because we take all the standards and all the training and make sure that we do the one thing is the prevention part of it. People really respect that there isn't ever a fire. They would prefer that they never move those trucks out. That may not be the activity of the firefighters, but in all honesty, that's what we need to do. They just had the firemen's convention and those 2 decks collapsed. I bet you that town wishes that decks were now inspected by building inspectors, which the state has now done away with. You don't even need a permit. You don't need it for roofs. You don't need it for decks. Foolish move. We keep watering down the standards and more people get hurt, and then everybody goes, my God, that's a real shame. Well, that shame is because we don't maintain these standards. So the reason why we have the number one fire department, because they achieve those standards and we hold people accountable to it. And I would urge the council, and I'm not referring to that we're going to do something unreasonable about this, but these inspections are necessary because as he pointed out, when they do their inspections, each truck has to be 10 feet apart in case that truck catches fire, doesn't put the next fire. So all these standards, these guys already know what to do. I don't think it's a question of not being cooperative. I think it's a question of being safety and doing the prudent step. And I would just encourage the council to stay the course. I think that the ordinance we put together in retrospect was probably too restrictive, but I think starting to eliminate these inspections would not be prudent for the city.
I'm not knocking our firefighters. Yes, we're number one, but in Bergen County, there's 70 towns. 66 of them are volunteer firemen, volunteer firehouses. So take that into consideration. I think we should be number one.
That's because we are.
Right. And I agree with Ted and 100% support. We have to do what is required by the fire department to do, but I do still think we can work together and come up with something that's amenable to everybody. I'm sure we're going to get there. We just have to have a little patience and make it happen. That's all.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get this. We're gonna figure it out.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mike Jones, Hackensack Brewing. Since as breweries, we're not allowed to coordinate with food trucks, so, you know, in a way, that's not really our fight to fight. I think it's great if we could have food trucks. We've had 3 food trucks that have been in the adjacent lot, and I'd be lying if I said that our business didn't do much better on those days. We don't have food, and a lot of the reasons that people leave the brewery is to go get food, right? You're drinking, you should be eating food. But the restaurants in our area do benefit from our presence there as well. My point that I want to make tonight is more of as a resident of Hackensack for the last 16 years than a homeowner and a taxpayer here. You know, I've been hearing for a long time that we want to pose ourselves as like a northern alternative to Hoboken. I just looked up Hoboken's food truck schedule. It's not every weekend. They are 7 days a week. And they have 5 food trucks on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. They've had 104 food trucks in September. And I don't know that restaurants are fleeing Hoboken at a high rate. So I think as a taxpayer, if we're looking at, you know, paying overtime for fire inspectors or, you know, that is something that we definitely have to work on. But at the same time, look, between us and elementary, I mean, we get people coming from eastern Pennsylvania, upstate New York. There's people that never heard of Hackensack that come to Hackensack because now it's a brewery tourism destination. And I think food trucks are part of that as well. So I think it's great that, you know, I think it's great that we're talking about it, right? I mean, the dialogue is important. And I think getting everybody in the room together, the restaurants, the breweries, I think that is important. I was hoping there'd be more restaurants here tonight to kind of, you know, speak their piece on it. But again, as a citizen in town, I don't think we should be too quick to throw tons of regulations on the food trucks right now because they bring people in. And those people come in, just like the breweries bring people in, those people come in, they go out for dinner that night. Or they go, you know, they order pizza from Presto's, or they go to Kinyobi. And, you know, I think looking at food trucks directly in competition with restaurants is kind of a skewed vision. I mean, when you have a restaurant, same thing, you know, a friend of mine once said, what if somebody pulled up a beer truck in front of the brewery? If that's threatening my business, I'm in trouble. Because I don't just sell beer, I sell an experience when you come to the brewery. And that's what restaurants do. People go out for dinner, they're not going out to a food truck. You know, they want to go out and they want to have dinner somewhere. They want to be waited on. They want the ambiance. It's 2 different things. It's apples and oranges. So, again, I'm not saying, and again, anybody that has a restaurant obviously is going to hear this as you know, just bring food trucks everywhere. I think there's a middle ground somewhere. And I think that's what we have to establish. And again, like I said, I would love to have a food truck in my parking lot 7 days a week. I would love it. But you know what? Right now, that's against state law, so it's not my fight to fight. But as a citizen of this town and as a taxpayer, I think that's something we need to look at because food trucks bring people in. They do. You know, a lot of times the food truck experience isn't, is that my 3 minutes? I'm up? The food truck experience is like a novelty, you know? I mean, it's not a 4-course meal, you know? It's something a little bit different. But I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to speak my piece. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, you know, just to be clear, because Hoboken's being referenced, what they're talking about is Hoboken and Uptown Hoboken has something called Pier 13, which is a pier that goes out into the Hudson River. They have a bar at the end of it. It's owned by, I think, the Hoboken Sailing Club. and there's a big, long concrete pier. So food trucks from all over come to this particular location and they park out onto the pier, and it's kind of segregated from the bar so that you can, sit out on the pier and eat. So it's kind of a unique environment that probably isn't, going to be replicated here in Hackensack. It's also, not particularly close to pretty much the restaurant part of town. And again, I'm just, bringing it out for clarification because it's being raised that generally speaking, that's where the food trucks tend to park, or other areas along the waterfront as opposed to, Washington Street, which is the main commercial street, the equivalent of our main street or something like that.
Right.
So in Hoboken, can food trucks park on the, excuse me, on the public streets?
Yes, I mean, there
Because
are.
we're currently talking about
Yes,
putting
I
it
mean,
on private property, right,
There are
everybody? Yeah.
rules about how much you can do it, and I can tell you, because that issue did come up, and I was the city attorney in Hoboken years ago, so I'm familiar with these sort of issues, but there was a food truck that, down by the PATH station, right, tons of commuters coming through, and there was a pizza truck and parked in front of a new pizzeria that had opened up, and it became, quite a contentious circumstance because, the restaurant owner is saying, look, I put my investment into this brick and mortar place, and here's a pizza truck in front of my restaurant, kind of like the example that the gentleman gave earlier. So, there is some inherent tension between food trucks and the restaurant community. Hoboken is, a bit unique in terms of the number of people that are, on the street, especially on the times and days when this Pier 13 is operating. Whether it's a perfect analogy or not, I'm not so sure.
I mean, all this is fixable. I mean, there's certainly, you can put some kind of quantifier in there, not within, I don't know,
That's our job.
1,000 feet of a food establishment, or 500, whatever makes sense, so you're just not right next door to them. I mean, all these things are fixable. I mean, that certainly is a very simple way to fix it. And fee-wise, I think this is another thing that's very simple to fix. We look at what's realistic to us. We look at what's realistic because you don't want to make it so exorbitant that food trucks don't want to come here. So you come up with something that's negotiable, that makes sense, because as Mike Jones
fair.
brought up, we can't expect our taxpayers to be paying for, overtime 3 hours for a $54 fee. But there's some way, I'm sure, that we could work all of this out. So that's all, to me, something that can happen. But I think the third thing, which is I think what really started a lot of this from the health department, was, do we have the resources to be able to do this number of inspections? Do we have the staff? And I think some of it, Dave has mentioned, fire, there's no way we have to do that, but what else is really required as far as how many inspections has to happen? I think we have to figure all that out. And, maybe it's something as simple as, if we come to some number, let's say we come up to some number and we say, okay, we can safely inspect 8 fire trucks a week. So maybe, there's some rule that, hey, the first 8 in, you got it. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you are. And if you didn't make it this time, you were number 9, get it in, next time in time to get it. There's ways we can fix all this, folks. So don't feel frustrated, because I'm sure that we will be able to come to a resolution that will be fair to both sides and to the city as well. So I'll get off my soap. Oh, I didn't realize we had somebody else going to talk. I'm sorry.
Irfan Qureshi, Hackensack Brewing. Just to the point about the food trucks, and I don't want to belay on Hoboken. There's a lot of towns doing a lot of different things too. But in Hoboken, there's 25 restaurants right by that pier. There's also, it's not just regulated to the pier as well. They do it between 3rd and 4th on Park. Also at Frank Sinatra Park, if you go there on a Sunday, you'll see food trucks there too. Not belaying that point, Hoboken's one town. There's a lot of towns doing things. And again, to Mike's point about bringing business in, there are some of these food trucks have massive followings. When food trucks were in the area, a lot of people, they came for the breweries, but they didn't know about the breweries as such. Some of these food trucks have 15,000 followers. People are coming from all over the state, across state lines. It's a rising tide in the sense that we're not here to compete against restaurants in any way whatsoever. That being said, when I hear something about prepackaged goods, that's a vending machine. Nobody is going to have dinner by their choice at a prepackaged goods vending machine food truck. There's no such thing as a food truck. that
That's the
sells-
only ordinance we had in effect.
Right.
That's
and-
why
and
that was brought up.
It's a bit.
That's why we had to
Right.
come up with a new
It's
one.
it's a bit outdated in the sense that nobody's going to go over there and say, let me get a prepackaged. You get that from a vending machine.
Right.
In the sense of, though, this being a restaurant thing versus a brewery thing, like you said, John, I think these are two separate things. For us to have our business thriving, in essence, having a food truck there, it helps the city thrive. It becomes a destination location, and I watch it happen. So, in regards to that, that's all I want to say about that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Right, Ari White, Wandering Q. With, I guess, a lot of dogs in this race, I also find myself in between a lot of the arguments that seem to have been made. So I know we're painting with a very broad brush here, but I guess just to make a couple things really clear, just for my own company's specific case, we're looking to do Thursday nights and not weekends. I am under the Department of Health here every single day of the entire year, on-site and off-site. As a guy who is in a lot of cities and 4 states regularly, I'm gonna back up your fire department that absolutely anybody using propane, certainly with us using actual wood fire, you cannot cut the fire department inspections. It's an absolute must. But for those of us not looking to pull up in front of any other restaurants, I mean, I'm talking about providing a kosher experience in a town without a single kosher restaurant, period. So there aren't, it's hard to quantify. It's not even so much a pizza shop in front of another pizza shop. I've been really proud. Even this past week, we did our first experiment with only doing deliveries to the two breweries on my block, directly from my kitchens. There were over 250 people that came from outside of Hackensack directly here. So I think that in terms of the unbridled potential of what this community has, and this is coming as a newcomer here, like you really have something amazing. All of these buildings that I see coming up everywhere, you're gonna want some place for them to go, and an entertainment center of some sort that you really have the nuggets of those here and in place. I'm not even talking about just potential. I mean, it's on the ground. I think I can speak for all the vendors that are here, and certainly a ton of them that didn't make it, that we're very happy that we were invited to the table for this conversation, and really look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have nearly as much to contribute as the previous speakers. I'm just coming up here as a Hackensack resident. A homeowner, and someone that enjoys being able to stay in town, being able to walk down the street and go have an experience, stop by somewhere, get dinner, go to the brewery maybe, have that street food type experience and not have to leave town, not have to go to New York City or Hoboken, Jersey City, Newark, anywhere. I'd prefer to stick near my home and in Hackensack. I just wanted to point out that some of the things I think could be overcome by perhaps and as far as the health department is concerned, could there not be like a quarterly or biannual inspection? It's just to show. I mean, I used to work in a food service, and I know the purpose of the inspection is to show competence in the ability to maintain temperatures and refrigerate things that need refrigeration things. If you can show that, I don't see you need to show that next week as well. Things like this, we could be more accommodating, but as far as what I saw in the record, the six events, that's telling me it looks like I'm going to be driving to a lot more events out of town, and I'd prefer to have them as close as possible. I love visiting the breweries nearby. I love going to the restaurants that are provided. You'll find me at Kenyobi, is all I got to say, or Presto's, or whatever. But I just wanted to make sure somebody spoke. I didn't know Mike Jones was a a resident of Hackensack, and I thought I was going to be the only one coming up here as a resident.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Motion to close to the public, if there's no one else?
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will just say this, and everybody in this room knows Hackensack is going through tremendous growth right now, from all different angles. It's, which is a great thing. This is what our goal, and we're accomplishing that. But with that comes tremendous growing pains. We have to grow and learn as we grow this city, and this is a perfect example. And that's why we pulled it and said, let's readdress this. We think it's restrictive, and we really need to, like I said before, this is probably going to be two ordinances, one pertaining to the areas up where the breweries are, and one pertaining probably to the rehab zone itself, which is Main Street. The 165 acres is part of the rehab zone. I can appreciate the Hoboken comment, but the big difference between Hoboken and Hackensack is they're established and been doing this for years, and we're trying to attract on Main Street, in particular in the zone, and it's built this way actually, a lot of new restaurants with outside dining and things like that. So we have to come up with that blend where we're not scaring people away, all right, or keeping them out of town, right? Because for every person that likes a food truck, there's probably one that likes to sit out on the street at a nice table outside and enjoy that atmosphere. It's another thing that is a destination, in other words. So these things all we have to balance this out. We'll sit down, we'll figure it out with your help, restaurants' help, our city officials' help. We'll check. I thought the Board of Health official was going to be here. She's not. Is she coming later?
No, I believe she had to cancel last minute, but with this input, we will sit down and follow up
Yeah.
and then have another meeting.
Because I want to know
Got it.
about the amount of inspections required and all that stuff. And one thing you guys have to realize, we're elected officials, but they're professionals. They're paid professionals doing what they're doing. Our fire inspector, Nunziata here, is, I know him personally. I know he takes it very seriously, his job, and all our firemen do. And we're going to take their advice, all right? We're not going to ever ask a city professional, or especially a fire inspector, to look the other way or tweak anything. So, we're going to, and that's fine. We'll get the rules straightened out, and we'll move forward. So, thank you.
Well said, Mayor, and I just want to go on the record, when you have this meeting, I want to be there.
Okay.
Next
is the discussion item of the 2020 recycling calendar. This happens to be my personal favorite topic in the whole wide world, because every time I do this, I get blasted for it. So, 2020 recycling calendar. Pros: not to printing a calendar. A, changes throughout the year can't be updated on a paper version. B, committee meetings are constantly being rescheduled. C, garbage and recycling changes make the calendar non-informational. 2, recycling every other week. We think that the residents have adjusted to the new schedule and would like to keep it every other week. The input from the council. Costs the city lots of money. We have a recycling center that can be used 6 days a week if a resident has overflow for recycling. 3, leaves. Bagging the leaves is more environmental safe for flooding concerns and clogging catch basins. This is a constant maintenance thing for the sewer department that goes out and jets lines because of silt and leaves that builds up. The thought process would be number 4, a postcard tear out. See the example explaining recycling and the bullet points for residents they can use for their home. Basically a tear out that could be posted on a refrigerator that's laminated, like a giant postcard. Or it could be attached to the calendar if that's what the mayor and council want to do. Suggestions: an online digital calendar that can be updated as needed and mail the postcard to the residents. That would be my recommended preference, but I submit to the mayor and council. and take whatever input they, or direction they say.
Do we take the biggest one first?
Whatever you want to do.
Bottles and cans. I say it has to be done every week. Paper, I think we could do every other. But the bottles and cans, how do you guys
I
feel?
agree 100%.
John, Dave?
It's a problem.
The cardboard we could get away with.
Yeah, the paper, I think you could do every other, but the bottles and cans, we want people to recycle, and I don't know, I think we need to get back to doing that every week.
I agree.
Dave?
I agree.
Leo, yes? John?
I wish it wasn't, because it actually works better this way for the DPW.
Oh, I wish it
saving
wasn't
the
either, but it
taxpayer
does-
money,
but-
but it's.
Yeah, but how much money we are saving?
I have no idea.
Thank you.
I haven't been given the numbers, but
Do you have the
again,
numbers, Dave? How much-
it's just,
don't have
they end up all over, there's so many out there now that they're all over the streets.
And
They're-
some people that really, really recycle, they have more recycling than they have regular garbage. And we're doing garbage twice a week. I think it has to be once a week. That's my opinion.
You decide. So if that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do.
I would also, and I want to go on the record, because we need to, it's just a matter of time before the DEP is going to make it mandatory that leaves get bagged. For me, as a resident who does his own landscaping, it's tough, because it's very easy just to blow your leaves out in the street, and a truck comes and picks them up and takes them away. And it's going to be time consuming, so it's not going to be easy to sell, but I'm telling the citizens of this city, it's just a matter of time before we don't have the choice. So I've already spoken to the city manager about this, to start a very aggressive program trying to entice people, free bags and everything else, to start bagging leaves. I know it's a pain, but we need to get it done. But 10 leaf bags or 15, whatever we get, that's like 1 week out of like a 12 to 13 week leaf season. So it's nowhere near enough. But let's go public with that and bring up the DEP's recommendations, because it is recommended that we do. And it costs the city a lot of money to clean out these catch basins with leaves that get down there, they rot, they clog everything up, and it causes a big problem for our infrastructure, and it really hurts our sewer system. And keeping the leaves out of there is very important. So.
One of the worst offenders is the landscaping company. They blow the leaf. They charge you as a resident so much money to clean your backyard, and then they blow all the leaf right in the street.
That's going to have to be. I don't know. Do we have landscaping licenses?
Yes.
In the city?
Somebody, have
they're all
to
going to
go
have to be
around.
notified once we start doing this that we're going to ask to have them bagged. So.
It's like anything else. Once everyone gets used to it, there's going to be some pain in the beginning, but once you get used to it, it's going to be okay. Because, the other thing is, you could just rake your whole lawn on a windy day and it's all back. So,
yeah, they blow all over the place.
Yeah, but the landscaping company, they charge you for doing that.
I know.
They call,
But they don't have to bag it, they could just put it
They
back
just
in the
blow
truck
it
and
away.
bring it.
No, but
bring
let
it.
them put it in the truck. They don't have to bag it. They can
but
take it
some
away.
people, they just put it on the sidewalk.
That's right.
Yeah.
On the street.
All right.
All right, so we're going to try and make this mandatory?
We're going to put
No,
the full information out and make the recommendation
Band-Aid
that
off, I think.
we're probably at the end of allowing people to move leaves to the street for the city to clean up because of the DEP conditions. And all these people that come to these council meetings and complain, what are you doing about street flooding? This is an absolute primary subject that causes part of that consideration. That, the leaves, the silt, plastic bottles and cans, that's why we're changing those grates on storm drains to prevent all this clogging, which obviously creates the street flooding. So can we just circle back on?
Mandatory, John?
I'm not proposing mandatory this year, but I think we should.
We did this last year. We
We
said
really
give it a
push it
shot.
hard enough. We need to push it harder.
How can you push it if you don't require it?
One or the
It's
other.
either one or the other.
Are there any type of grants from the federal government that will help us with getting bags
Well, I
and
don't,
things like that?
I think the city has the resources to give away the bags. It's the enforcement component. Are we gonna tag people for moving these leaves into the street? And then when you get into the hardship thing, everybody's gonna come in and say, I'm a widow, I have all these leaves, I can't afford to hire a landscaper, now you want me to put them in a bag. The local Boy Scouts are not gonna show up here and help me out and do all of this.
But what do other towns do? Other towns require it.
They take a pretty dim view of, they just enforce the rules and stick to it. But the problem is, this has never been an enforced ordinance or condition in the city. So I think, my personal opinion is, I think that we give the best informational that we can to residents, try to educate them and tell them, this will be the last year. Because then in January, we're gonna have to go to zero tolerance and tell people, you got your last year, you got your free bags, we did what we could for you, but you're gonna have to come up to 2020 standards, and 2020 standards don't allow for you to rake leaves into the storm drains, and we have to clean them up.
Well, in Paramus, right, the resident put the leaf right in the sidewalk. They make a mound, and then a truck comes with a big hose, vacuum, and go to the next house, to the next house. What is wrong with that?
But the minute you put the leaves on the sidewalk, now we have another liability for a slip and fall or these kids. See, one thing compounds the next thing.
So we're gonna call Paramus to see how many incidents they got. Because I see the truck all the time going around, suck the leaf. They go by the main hole, clean the holes.
Currently, the city doesn't own that piece of equipment. We have that scooper thing that scoops up these leaves and puts them in.
The problem is, once they're on the street and the wind comes and blows them away, that's when we have.
And the absolute worst is when it snows, when those leaves are on the street. Then it's a real
You could put that
mess.
bundle of leaves out there and pick it up immediately, that we wouldn't even need this conversation.
Right. So let's circle back to my favorite subject.
So we gotta go around.
Are we gonna make the city manager make a calendar that I'm gonna be criticized later that will become rendered useless in probably 60 days? Are we just gonna come out with a recycling cardboard thing that we can send out to residents and they can post on a refrigerator that's laminated? Once again, I will follow whatever you tell me to do.
Give it a try.
I like it.
Give it a try.
Because the last time we had this meeting, there was criticism from people that said, oh, we have to have a calendar. And then the second that calendar became basically out of kilter because of changes, well, now what are you gonna do about it? Well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's a printed document and things change. That's the problem with it. So I personally like the digital online calendar that we can update and make residents, of course, someone's gonna come up to the microphone and say, some seniors don't have computers. They don't look this stuff up.
Yeah, but you're gonna send out like a post.
No, they're gonna get the
Right.
recycling
So
part
they're
of it.
gonna have something.
But somehow, there are people that like the printed calendar because it had the council meetings agenda on there, and it
They
had
wanna
this
write
on there,
something there.
and they wrote something on, look,
Or maybe we could give some to the library, to the senior center.
they're gonna get a card with the recycling and the dates that their sanitation's picked up. I have an example, I didn't bring it up, my apologies. That's like a giant postcard that's laminated that you could put on your refrigerator. So we could attach that to the calendar and they could tear it out and put it on the refrigerator. Or we could omit the calendar, go to a digital calendar on the online at our website that we can constantly change when we have to make changes, and handle it that way. But if you want to go back with the traditional calendar with the tear out for recycling, I'll follow whatever direction the mayor and council want to do. Just tell me how to get this done so I can start
I
this.
think if we do digital, I think it should be a format where you have an option to print it out, almost like a PDF, and then you could, leave some at the senior center, update it regularly, different areas if somebody has to
Well,
have
anybody
a
that
printed
calls and
one.
says they don't have a computer, we can print it out.
Right, exactly.
No, but I mean, as long as this is a recycling calendar. We started adding in all these
Right.
dates, and like you said, we get ourselves in trouble because these dates change, and then everyone's angry that they looked on the
Well,
calendar.
the council,
and it's the wrong date.
the Shade Tree Commission meeting was canceled, and it's on the calendar, and I showed up, so then all of a sudden I have no ability to notify.
It's really only supposed to be recycling and garbage pickup,
Correct.
so my vote is give them something that everyone,
try the
something that they
online
could put
thing.
on the fridge.
Okay,
And there's something you put
and
on
we'll
the
send them
fridge.
the postcard too.
The postcard for folks that don't
Yep.
go online, so they have
Like a
something.
magnet type.
They'll have an online digital calendar, and they will also have a mailed postcard calendar to put on the refrigerator.
Let's try
But
it.
there won't be a regular calendar.
Let's try it.
Okay,
Okay,
next, please.
thank you. Number 3 is the October 5th festival called The Main, Music, Art, Brew, and Fair, which is going to occur October 5th from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Atlantic Street Park. Live music, food trucks, beer garden, art display. The city of Hackensack's Upper Main have joined together to bring a fall festival to the downtown. Come taste beer from the local breweries, listen to music, and visit the food trucks. Restaurants from Main Street will also be participating. Our health department, fire department, police department, and DPW will be involved to see that this event is safe for all. DJs, live band, beer garden, details and additional security will be provided by the Upper Main Alliance.
Is there a rain date for this? Just
No.
It rains? No?
I asked that same question.
And we're kind of doing this in lieu of the street festival, because we used to do the street festival at that time. The street is still too ripped up, so we're doing this, right?
And my last thing on the list is the EV charging station for Bergen County. Basically, electric cars are obviously growing in use and thought. The electronic transformer person pays for the electricity. So basically, these companies provide basically an electric gas pump that's at a location. You pull up, you get out your Mac card or credit card, swipe away, this thing, you plug into it, it charges. When you come out, you pay the bill. Initially, I thought it was done by solar power. No.
No.
It's a regular electricity, and you pay as you go, so to speak. So there is.
Where would they be located?
So the suggestion is the stakeholders. It was suggested by the stakeholders, the Bergen County Planning Division, that they reach out for Green Spot has recently launched a public accessibility for electric vehicles, charging stations, in Asbury Park. So what they're trying to do is basically unify this ability for people to have charging stations throughout the state. Obviously, you have an electric car and it'll only go so far. You need to make sure that where you're going has the ability to recharge that car, because some of them only go 175 miles without a charge or 400 miles without a charge. So this is obviously not going to go anytime soon. So I can have a representative of this company come to a COW meeting and give the full details if you folks were interested, but quite candidly, I think that we're at least gonna have to hear how this works going forward, because electric cars, I don't think are going away anytime soon.
Albert, weren't we doing something with this with the garage and?
Yeah, we're putting,
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, the only project that I'm aware of is I think it's 5 or 6 EV stations at Atlantic Street Garage that was part of the settlement with Volkswagen for Dieselgate. They needed places to put them.
Okay, so it'll be in Atlantic Street Garage, but not in any other of the parking lots?
correct. So now, obviously,
So these people want to come in and put it throughout?
they, like all of our vendors, they want to open this door, and quite candidly, I think we're gonna have to at least entertain it, because electric cars and people that commute for a long distance of more than 138 miles every day might be interested in one of these cars, one of these.
There's actually different levels of
Yes.
chargers. There's one where you could basically almost plug into your regular home outlet, very similar to that. And then there's special ones like these people have, which charge much faster and much more economical.
They got all over Florida now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Tesla has them all across the country.
Okay.
Charging walls.
Other than the update of the city council, the two-way conversion from Court Street to Atlantic, Thursday, the traffic light will be turned on that's in place there, and they will mill and pave and finish that project by the latest of October 15th. But that project is being pursued and will be completed, and we will have two-way conversion from that process. And then we have some streets that I need to go down and check with Roberts Engineering that we have on the north side of Main Street, that we're gonna make that conversion two-way. So the city.
I thought we said we weren't going to do the north. We were just going to work from.
We're gonna look at that and certainly be able to report and plan this, but so far, for sure, Court to Atlantic will be completed.
All right, so when we do Court to Atlantic by October 15th, will the streetscape be done?
Yes.
So all the streetscape?
Well, the people that obviously, if
Sidewalk
there are
and the
businesses
pavers and-
but the curbing, the milling.
The curbing's
and
already
paving,
in, I think.
Right, will be done.
But not the actual sidewalks and the trees?
Well,
and that?
because of those businesses also have to put this through. Fran, am I missing something here?
No, I
as far
thought
as-
we were gonna do it.
Maybe Frank can just
Okay.
clarify this.
Are you saying about October 15th, we're gonna turn from Atlantic Street going?
From Court
From Court to Atlantic, one block.
Just the one block section in there, from the green
Two blocks.
all the way out to Atlantic. All of the separation was done, the curbing has been done,
No,
and we're gonna
no,
move
no.
forward.
Yes, from Atlantic Street, you'll be able to make it.
We're gonna make a right.
Because that's already open from Court.
The streetscape will not be, the streetscape in terms of street trees, the grates, the sidewalks will not be new on October 15th. It's my understanding that October 15th from Atlantic Street south will be converted to two-way, and the streetscape will be following that.
Okay, but the curbing, nothing that will involve.
Yeah, the curbing is in.
Okay, and while Fran's here too, so then, just to make sure, I think we talked about this before, but so everything will be lined for the new tandem parking and the poles will be moved?
That's
for
my
meters?
understanding, yes.
So all of that will happen in conjunction?
Yes, everything from curb to curb will be complete for the two-way. Everything from curb out is still in process. But the poles and the meters, it's my understanding, will be based on the final design.
The tandem parking?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how are we notifying the public and what kind of signage, what are we doing here to make sure that folks realize this happened? I remember I know we did the whole of State Street all at once, but remember we did a lot, put stuff in the middle of the street, didn't we?
I will verify all of that to make sure.
Yeah, let's just make sure.
Up and down the middle. And do a next roll, probably.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. That's it?
So when are they gonna start the paving? You know?
The last thing is that Steve is going to talk about at some point, there was a resolution for public consumption of alcoholic beverage that's going to come up that was a change. Steve, you want to just briefly, the only reason why this got changed, because this was a conflict as far as the prosecution side.
Yeah, essentially, our municipal prosecutor advised that the municipal judge is interpreting certain language in Chapter 119 of the city code dealing with public consumption in a manner that we do not believe is intended, relating to whether you can be charged with a violation if the alcohol has to be outside of its original container or not. So it's just purely a technical change. We're adding it in so that there is going to be zero confusion that it will be illegal and improper to publicly consume alcohol or to have an open container. They're not connected to each other as the municipal judge seems to believe. I mean, it's one of those things where, sometimes a comma, maybe not as precisely placed as necessary, can lead two people to come to opposite conclusions. So we want people to know what the rules and regulations are, so we have made it precise and crystal
So
clear.
how does that work with, let's take the event coming up on October 5th. How does that work with that? You have an open container of beer, you're in a beer garden, you're on public property.
Well, I mean, I believe that the code has particular provisions dealing with that. I mean, we're talking about, walking down the street carrying an open,
I just wanted to
bottle of
make sure,
whiskey.
because I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot.
No, this is not affecting anything, anything along those lines. This deals with a more precise.
The clarity is, if you have an open container, it's in the original open container. If you take a beer and pour it in a solo cup, that's not considered a container, it's a cup. I think that we're splitting hairs here personally from my prior life, but it's okay.
So if I was at the beer garden, I'd have to be walking around drinking out of the keg.
Yeah.
Basically, okay.
I mean,
Got it.
generally speaking, what happens in these events is they become like a temporary licensed premises where you are, essentially a bar. You have to be approved if you're going to be serving alcohol at a beer garden. The precise limitations have to be reviewed and approved by, the permitting authority. So, you just can't, have an event with a beer garden without going through that process, or any place else.
So for this event we're having, you'd have to stay in the Atlantic Street Park area.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be able to start walking up
Yes,
Main Street.
there would
Right.
need to be,
Okay.
there would need to
Just
be a
fencing.
defined
They
actual
have,
area.
they have fencing set up.
Okay, so you stay within there and you're
It's
fine.
outlined, and that's
stay
where
there
you
and you're
have to
fine.
be.
Yeah,
I think
so-
they're giving bracelets also.
So if you look in, I'm just pulling up the city code here. Chapter 11919 provides that we can issue for good cause the permit for possession or consumption of alcoholic beverages in a designated park or other public place under its jurisdiction at a designated time and times in connection with a special event. So that's the exception to the rule that's provided in the code for us to be able to allow these sort of events. This is, again, a technical change dealing with the circumstance of, somebody who is, found on the street, the old brown bag, are they violating our public consumption laws? And as I said, the municipal prosecutor indicated the judge felt that it needed to be physically out of its original container to be able to prosecute that offense, and that is not the intent. The intent
Right.
is, if you're drinking from that bottle, you should be charged just as much as if you take that out of the bottle and pour it into a red Solo cup.
Right. Done? Motion to open to the public?
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Member of the public?
Maybe they give you braces and you're allowed to drink, and they check your age. I gotta show my license.
Good evening, Gary Tizano, Environmental Commission, City of Hackensack. I was informed earlier, my question was going to be about the greenhouse, but the report, the study that was performed by DMR, so I spoke to Fran, and it looks like we're going to have a presentation, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in the near future. But the other question I had was, since we allocated that money for the study, half of that money was for the study, the other half was for the remediation of the asbestos that's in the present greenhouse. Now, whether we elect down the road to either knock down the existing greenhouse or let it remain and rehabilitate it, the
Either way.
asbestos still has to be removed.
Has to be remediated.
So I'm asking, can we just move forward and get a contractor in there and let's get rid of the asbestos? You have the money allocated. Good winter project. It's not in the way of anyone. The garden people are out of there within the next 60 days. And I think it's about 9,000, or I think you had 20,000 roughly allocated for the study and the asbestos removal. So somewhere in, it's about half from what I understand. That's all I'm asking.
12,000.
Let's get a price for, the exact price for the asbestos removal, see if there's any difference between asbestos removal after a demo and before. And
No, it has to
obviously
come
take the
out
cheaper
first.
one.
You can't,
Yeah, you have to take it down.
no matter what you do, it has to go first.
Mhm.
So that's all I'm asking on that.
Done.
The other question I had was on the alcohol consumption. The question of liability on public property with alcohol consumption, whether it's a permit, fenced in, what have you. That's a question that came up as I was listening to the comment from Steve.
There's a special permit, an extension of premises from the ABC, and they get an umbrella policy with a rider with the city. They're fully insured.
All right.
I can speak on that too. We're extending our brewery licenses, so
That's what I
liability
said.
falls on us. So it's an extension of our license.
I question that on city property, but, because everybody gets shot at when the lawsuits come. Thank you.
Gary, while you're here, 1 minute. Gary, congratulations. Why don't you can you explain to us, I think the community garden received an award?
We're going down.
We should have announced it, but.
We're going
take us-
down for the conference and workshop down to Mercer County College on the 4th of October. Hackensack will be awarded the presentation of a Urban Garden Achievement Award. So I'll report back on that when we go down.
Wonderful.
Lorelai's going down.
Congratulates everyone for.
I'm going down, Edith is going down. There may be some others from the Environmental Commission to go down as well. But, yeah, we're excited about that. That
You
came
should
from
be.
ANJAC, the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. It's presenting the award. We didn't have to apply for it. It just came from that group. So we're happy
Oh,
about
good.
that, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Richard Sullivan, you mentioned, Mr. LaBrosse, the passing of a couple of members of the Co-op Condo Board.
Yes.
Another member of the Hackensack family passed away. I mean, I know you have memos that circulate, but Joyce Biddle passed away this past week. She was the former deputy city clerk, I think.
Oh, I did see that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
she
saw
was the
that.
city clerk. I think she was deputy before you, Debbie, right? Immediately.
Yes.
Yeah. And she was a good person and a good worker, and just somebody ought to remember her. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, I said that note went out from the city, actually, to us. Yes, you're right. Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Motion to close?
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed? Madam Clerk,
We need a motion.
motion to go into closed session, please.
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed?
Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to discuss certain actions under section 7B7 and 7B8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, which pertains to matters falling within attorney-client privilege, ongoing litigation, and personnel matters concerning the employment of a current or prospective public employee. Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack is of the opinion that such circumstances may presently exist, and whereas the mayor and council wishes to discuss the following issues: personnel matters, ongoing litigation, matters involving attorney-client privilege, matters involving the purchase, lease, or acquisition of real property, any pending or anticipated litigation or contract negotiations. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the city of Hackensack deem it necessary to exclude the public from this discussion. The outcome of the discussion will be disclosed within 90 days or at some time as the interests of the city do not require confidentiality. Steve?
I do not have specific cases. I have some matters to discuss, but not cases. If one happens to come up, as usual, I will announce it at the end of the closed session.
Good evening, everybody. Need a motion to come out of closed session?
Before that, Steve, the cases?
Eight?
Yes. Thank you. Yes, during closed session, we did end up talking about two litigation matters. One is the ongoing litigation with ex-Chief Zisa. The other is the ongoing affordable housing litigation with Fair Share Housing Center. Thanks.
Okay,
Do we need a motion?
motion.
Offer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed?
And then a motion to come out of the cow?
Motion to come out and close the cow.
Offer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed?